They're such a large, beautiful red raspberry, and their flavor is pretty good as well. It's always exciting when the first cherry tomatoes starts ripening because I know all the tomatoes are gonna start ripening pretty quickly after. My potato harvest for me this year has been incredibly disappointing. It is the worst potato harvest I've had to date. This bed has been my favorite planting of the season. It is beautifully layered with the tomatoes growing up against the trellis and then the little patch of carrots. Welcome to my garden. I'm Amy, the Nourishing Gardener, and I garden in my back and front yard in Southern Ontario, Zone 6. It's been a slow start to the season, but the garden is finally starting to come into its own. The spring harvests are coming to an end, and the summer harvests are coming into full force. While many crops are just getting started in their production, some are done and the beds are transitioning over to fall crops already. My raspberry patch has been such a joy this summer season. I planted these red raspberries last year, so this is the first year I'm getting fruit from them, and I am taken back by how much they have produced this first year. I will definitely be expanding my patch of raspberries. They're such a large, beautiful red raspberry, and their flavor is pretty good as well. This year I decided to let the fall golds create a spring crop, and I have not been disappointed. I really wanted to test the ever-bearing nature of this variety. Normally I would have just cut it all back down and let it produce a big fall crop, but I think I like having the spring and the fall crop better. It allows just for a larger window of having fresh raspberries. The goal will be to connect these two bushes together by extending both the patches into the center and replacing the blackberries with the two raspberry varieties. Over to the large center bed in my vegetable garden, this is my second planting of veggies. I already got a crop of broccoli from this space. In the very front of the bed, I have a row of bush green beans that are just getting going. A rabbit has been nibbling on the leaves, despite my rabbit proofing. Just behind them, I have a sweet pepper variety called Lipstick, and it produces a 4-inch red sweet pepper. I have baby fruit starting to form, which is very exciting. I do have one plant, however, that looks like it might be a sneaky jalapeno that got mislabeled. I'm also bagging my sweet peppers this year to protect them from pepper fly. The cherry tomatoes I have in each 4 corners of this bed are grown to the top of their trellis and starting to ripen their fruit. It's always exciting when the first cherry tomatoes starts ripening because I know all the tomatoes are going to start ripening pretty quickly after, and we'll be in tomato canning season before we know it. Back behind the peppers and along my pathway, I have 4 bush acorn squash that have found their legs and are growing like weeds. They each have at least one baby acorn squash on them so far. Some have a few I can see starting. Over to the raised beds, this bed had a crop of potatoes in it that has been harvested. My potato harvest for me this year has been incredibly disappointing. It is the worst potato harvest I've had to date. While the plants still look fairly green, the stems had actually broken off in a windstorm and were starting to rot. The plants also didn't flower and weren't behaving as normal, so I expected this smaller yield. And I didn't want to leave them in the ground any longer and use up this large chunk of space they had been given to produce a mediocre yield. I had a goal of harvesting 72 pounds of potatoes and I only ended up with 30, which is just too bad. But this bed won't stay empty long. I have the soil all worked up and loose for some fall root crops. I'm planting crops of carrots, beets, and turnips from this bed. Hopefully they'll make up some of that volume I was expecting from the potatoes for our winter pantry. Over on the arch trellis, I have a watermelon vine growing and it's been producing little baby fruit. So hopefully they're pollinated and will start putting on some size. This is my first year trying watermelon. This is a little baby variety. I also have snap peas growing on these trellises, and they've done fantastic. They were a little bit slower to get going this spring, and I kind of thought they wouldn't produce anything, but they have far outperformed my expectations. Over to my next raised bed, which has kind of been the problem child of the season. The soil is just very heavy and compacted in this bed, so I'm working to improve it. On either side, I've planted more bush green beans, and the rabbit has found them all the way over here as well. I have some spring onions planted here that has been doing amazing. In the center, I have 2 dwarf style butternut squashes that I'm hoping will fill out and take over the center of the bed. The green beans that have been left alone by the rabbits are starting to flower, which is exciting. And like the peas on the trellis, these peas are slow to start, but they've come into their own and produced a beautiful crop. In the front of the bed is where I had my spring lettuce, and I've now succession planted in some peppers and some basil. The goal is to make some pesto for pasta season, if the bugs don't eat it all first. On the next arch trellis, I have a cantaloupe growing, which has just been a prime target for the cucumber beetles this season. I've had to put some mesh bags over the growing points of this vine in order to get any of the leaves to actually leaf out. The cucumber beetles were just eating the baby leaves down so quickly. So far, it's been quite effective. The way I deal with the cucumber beetle is to just go out once or twice a day and knock them off the plant into a container of soapy water. This problem child of a bed is doing better than it was this spring, so hopefully that means the soil is improving underneath it. You can see the peas are starting to come to the end of their season and yellowing out and starting to dry up. They simply just don't like the heat. This next bed has been my favorite planting of the season. It is beautifully layered with the tomatoes growing up against the trellis and then the little patch of carrots. This spring I had a planting of cabbage right at the front, and the layering was just absolutely breathtaking. Something I will certainly be repeating. The cabbages have since been harvested out, and I've succession planted with a couple more sweet peppers and a small patch of heat-tolerant lettuce that I'll need to stake these carrots up so they stop smushing them. The carrots so far are developing well. I think I have a few more weeks before they're ready for harvest. This round of carrots will mostly get canned up into chicken soup or frozen into homemade chicken pot pies. And these tomatoes, they're near the top of their trellis, and the fruit is huge already. This variety is called bread and salt, and it makes a large red meaty tomato. I have found them to be a much more reliable variety than Amish paste. Their disease resistance seems to be much better for me. On my last art trellis, I have 2 bush acorn squash. You can tell that one sprouted before the other due to their size. The larger of the 2 already has baby fruit forming. I'm not sure that I'm loving this variety for vertical growing, however. It is very bushy and kind of blocking the walkway. In this empty section is where the other half of my potato planting was. And planting potatoes here was just a mistake from day one because it didn't make use of this trellis like I did with the carrot and tomato bed. So that's a mistake I'll be correcting with some fall planting. In the front, I have some onions that have been attacked by the allium leaf miner. I've already removed 1 row of onion. I'm giving the little patch a chance, but I think the allium leaf miner did them in. I am so ready to pull them out and get something fresh in there. I am trying to save more seeds from the garden so I don't have to repurchase them every year. Peas are one of the easiest vegetable varieties to do that with, so I've left 1 plant unpicked just to pick the seeds so I can repeat this next spring. Now look at this bed. It knows how to make use of vertical space. The onions along the front of this bed, however, are struggling just the same as the onions in the other bed. I have a cucumber plant growing off to the side, which is forming baby cucumbers already. This variety is called China Jade, and last year my 1 plant produced over 20 pounds of cucumbers. So I'm excited to see if the same thing will happen this season. I mean, this plant is just loaded. I also find this variety holds up better to the cucumber beetle for me. They still show up, they just don't seem to devastate the plant as much as other varieties I've grown. Along the base of my tomatoes is some beets that have been attacked by a leaf miner as well. Not the allium leaf miner, a different one. They're now recovering and coming out of it, but they haven't shown any signs of forming roots yet. But we'll leave them be, they aren't affecting anything, and we'll see if we can still get a crop of beets. This is a Hungarian heart tomato, which is more of a pink tomato, and they're huge. I saw a few of the tomatoes are blushing, so it won't be long until we get our first harvest. I'm going to have to top the tomatoes here shortly so that I encourage the large tomatoes they're forming to ripen before our first frost. In this large pot, I decided to try some pole green beans, and I'm absolutely in love with the way it's performing. Far surpassed my expectations. I've already harvested over a pound of green beans, and it's just started producing. Planting in giant pots like this is something I want to experiment more with next season. I thought it would be fun to maybe do a series on how much this pot can grow year over year and see what the best combination of plants for maximum yield might be from a large pot. There's so many things you could grow in a pot this size. I'm thinking you can do cherry tomatoes one year, grow squash up at another, intermix some interplantings. I think it would be really fun. With my backyard thoroughly covered, it's time to move over to the front yard to see how that's been doing. Hopefully by the August garden tour, I will have officially grown grass along my pathway. Over in the front yard, I replaced some failing cabbages with some zucchini, and this one has baby yellow zucchini forming, which is very promising. On the other side of the path, however, the zucchini is stunted. They were planted at the same time, they're the same variety, but something is just going on there. These cabbages are also just not forming and putting on size, despite regular feedings. The front yard has two patches where I grow vegetables, and I am having a very hard time getting anything to perform like the way it does in the backyard. I'm starting to think it's either something in the soil or maybe there's just too many roots from my perennials that things just aren't performing and they stay stunted. I have two more dwarf butternut squashes planted. Along the front of the bed, I planted jalapenos, which are producing fruit, which is promising. Along the back side of the bed, I've let a couple of my spring broccoli go to seed to see if it's worth growing my own microgreen seeds for the winter. In the other patch, I decided to sow a bunch of bush green beans just to see what I could get to grow here. The broccoli did very poorly, didn't put on any size. So far, the green beans seem to be doing okay. They're on the smaller side, but they're growing and starting to produce some flowers, which is promising. With all of the harvests I've gathered from the garden so far, I am just shy of 84 pounds harvested from the garden towards my 650 pound harvest goal, with many more harvests still to come.